Do you suppose I ever got one Democrat vote? No. And so I look at it and say, this isn't about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. If it was, they would have approved one of my bills. This is about controlling how you use energy, which, just like water, energy and water are two things that if you control it, you can control where you work, how you work, where you live, how far you can commute. In other words, the government utopia that our friends keep trying to usher in. So ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake, 80-32 and Barbara Boxer's greenhouse gas cap and trade effort has very little to do with the environment and everything to do with government power and control.
The people who have managed the financial operations of the state of California haven't done a good job. And one of the areas I look at is particularly bad. What the state of California has done is promise people who are former employees, people who are current employees, and people who will be future employees a tremendous amount of money after they stop working. It's so much money that I believe 5, 6, 7, 8 times larger than the entire budget for the entire state every year. I don't think there's any way that this money can be paid as a promise. Is there anything you can do to correct this? Obviously, we're headed exactly where it raises. There's no question about it. What's the status? Can you do anything to change that?
Great question. Has to do with California's unfunded liabilities for its public sector employee unions. I'll tell you the main thing that you can do to solve it is to vote for John Eastman for Attorney General. Right. Because what he had told you earlier tonight was that the retroactive granting of increased benefits was a violation of California's Constitution insofar as giving people more pay for work already performed, as well as a gift of public funds, which is illegal. And if you elect him, he's going to try to attack that with a lawsuit and unwind it, because that's the only way it can legally be unwound. Now, at the federal level, I'm running for the United States Senate, and I'm a big believer in the 10th Amendment, which I believe is a forgotten amendment. I don't see a direct role for me as a U.S. Senator trying to unwind California's mess in this regard. If I was running for governor, I would think that I had a more direct constitutional role. But again, let me be clear, the best thing you can do to solve that problem is vote for John Eastman. I was just meeting your charter. It was 100% for the second. Yes, sir.
Coming from California, that's sort of importantly, just because city laws and tax, and the revenues, stuff like that. How do you exactly know those services?
Great. The question had to do with the Second Amendment, the second of our 10 Bill of Rights. Let me give you an example of what I'm going to do about that in my current capacity. In the next day or two, there's likely going to be a bill on the floor of the Assembly that would outlaw open carry. I will vote against and speak against that bill because if you twin banning open carry with the highly restrictive concealed carry permits in California, what you find is that you would effectively banish law-abiding citizens from being able to carry weapons out in public. That is the root of the Second Amendment. Now, I've got a voting record on this issue, and I can say unequivocally that in 6 years in the California State Assembly, I've gotten nothing but A's from the National Rifle Association and occasionally an A+. I'm still trying to figure out how I can get an A+. I didn't know that they had advanced credit, but I think it has to do with perhaps the type of speech you gave on the floor of the assembly or something like that. So I have a proven record in that regard. One of my opponents, Tom Campbell, has gotten C's, D's, and F's from the National Rifle Association. So, we both have a voting record. It's very important you understand where we come down on those issues.
Just wanted to thank you for being here tonight, and also wanted to thank everybody else for being here tonight, because we encourage this meeting, and I'm sure it encourages everybody else here. I wanted to ask you, sir, states give the dollar to the federal government and they receive a different amount of that. We, I think, are getting 78 cents on our dollar, while Hawaii gets $1.42 or something like that, I think. What are you going to do, or what do you propose doing to help us to get more of our tax dollars back to the federal government? Or do you think we should just send 78 cents for every dollar we give the government, the federal government?
Right. The question having to do with how much money you're getting back from the federal government. Let me be very clear about this calculation. I think we often focus too much on how much we get back from the federal government, rather than on focusing on what we should focus on, which is how much are we giving those in the first place. There are a lot of reasons why states get different amounts of money back from the federal government. For example, back during the Cold War, California got a lot more money back from the federal government because we actually used to manufacture things in California. I spent 13 years in the defense and aerospace industry, the last few as an executive, working for a company that worked with all the prime contractors in California. In fact, I've done some work with Aerojet just down the road. And as we've seen over the years, the manufacturing capacity in California has fled to other states, like Texas, like Alabama, like Mississippi, because of their labor laws, because of their energy costs, because of the red tape costs, and because of the taxes. And so that has been a significant component, that and the fact that we have been spending less on weapons acquisition and R&D that California needs to get back. Now, another reason why California gets less back, states like Arizona, states like Florida, that have a higher percentage of senior citizens on Social Security, well, they get more back from the federal government because people go to retire in places like Arizona and places like Florida. California, because of its higher tax structure, people typically don't often retire here as a destination. Now, there are specific areas that we can and should and must see increased federal reimbursement. Let me give you one big glaring area. The federal government reimburses California for only a fraction of the cost of incarcerating illegal immigrants in our prison system. Given that the fact that they're here represents a failure of the U.S. immigration system, you would think that the federal government at the very least would owe us 100% reimbursement for those individuals that are prison citizens. The reason why this is important is that we have discovered over the years that if you simply deport these criminals to the nations that gave them to us, more often than not, because of flaws in that nation's criminal justice system and corruption, they end up out of prison magically, quite quickly, and then find their way back to California with great speed. So we can't simply release them to the nations in which they came, because they'll, in many cases, come right back to California, even before their prison sentences would have been completed in the state of California.